Yeah. So real quick, my name is Yesenia. I'm the Assistant Director of Admission here, as well as Admission Counselor. I primarily work with a lot of students in the California Bay Area, as well as Texas and Central Washington. So if any of you are from those locations, I'm your admission counselor, and I'm more than happy to help you along the process of applying to Gonzaga in regards to anything that there is to know about GU. With me also, we do also have some other colleagues that are joining us today, so I'll give them also a moment to introduce themselves. I'll start off with Sarah. Sarah, if you would like to introduce yourself real quick.
Awesome, thanks Yesenia. My name's Sarah and I'm the Director of Financial Aid Operations at Gonzaga. I get really excited about financial aid and I am so happy to see so many people here, so thank you. I work with all levels of students, but I really love working with new students. I think it's a ton of fun to help students on this journey. So happy to share a bit more about the process. You're going to be hearing from me quite a bit this evening. And so I will pass it back to Yesenia.
Awesome, thank you so much. We do have our admission folks also joining us today, so I'll allow them to also introduce themselves. We'll start off with Matt.
Everyone, welcome. Happy Wednesday evening. The West Virginia family, it's like 9 p.m. there. Thank you for joining us. My name is Matt Lyons. I'm an admission counselor here at Gonzaga. I work with students from San Diego, Colorado, Oklahoma, Kansas, Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, Massachusetts, and Rhode Island. I coordinate some of the scholarships you'll hear about today, and I look forward to speaking with you. Thank you.
Awesome. So I'm sure a lot of you guys have worked also with Matt. I got to see some shout outs for Matt, so awesome job for joining us today. Up next is Audrey.
Hi, I'm Audrey Minton. I'm the Senior Transfer Admission Counselor here at Gonzaga, and I work with a lot of students from all over the country, transferring from the community colleges and other universities, student veterans, returning adult students. So I don't have any particular states like Matt and Yesenia, but do work with a lot of students from across the nation.
Fantastic, thank you so much, Audrey. We also have Kenji and Nate. Kenji, go ahead and introduce yourself if you will.
Hey everybody, my name's Kenji Lanembui. I'm actually from Spokane, so I thought we have a couple of local students in the room, so welcome. I am from Spokane, but I work with students really far away. So our students throughout Central and South America, I'm your guy. I also work with students in Europe, Africa, and then the states of Alaska and Wyoming. So our Anchorage friend, I look forward to talking to you later. I'll be here to help out with any kind of international questions, and I'll see you all in the Q&A in the chat.
Fantastic. And Nate.
Hey all, my name's Nate Manader. I'm an Associate Director of Admission here at GU and Admission Counselor. I work with students mostly the east side of Lake Washington, so from Mercer Island over to Issaquah and then up to Bothell. I also work with our Nebraska students as well. So welcome all. Excited to talk about financial aid.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, everyone, for introducing yourselves. So again, thank you all so much for joining us today, for finding resources specifically for financial aid and scholarships. We will be also allowing you all to ask any questions throughout the presentation. There's a Q&A function, not necessarily the chat that you all are letting us know where you're from. There's a specific link at the very bottom of your screen where you can actually ask some questions. All of us on the background will be kind of helping assist, either answering questions live or we will be answering those individually as we start looking through those questions. So with that being said, thank you all so much once again for joining us today. I will let Sarah go ahead and get started with the presentation. On my end, I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen so you can also see what we're going to be presenting for you all today. All right. So.
Great, thanks Yesenia. Before we dive into the financial aid process, I wanted to take a moment and highlight our mission in the financial aid office and kind of our approach to assisting students and families with the process. So I work at Gonzaga. We're here to talk a little bit about Gonzaga financial aid, but this is really going to be an overview about the whole financial aid process. That being said, I think one of the things that I love about my work at Gonzaga is how committed we are to Gonzaga's mission, and we really hope that that's reflected in our service and our policies. We see our role in the financial aid office not only to assist students and families with, how to fill out a FAFSA or how to apply for a scholarship, but also develop and educate students through our work. One of the things I've learned in my time in financial aid is how deeply personal finances can be. To apply for financial aid, you have to kind of fork over a lot of financial information. So if you don't get your questions answered today, or other questions come up throughout the process, which they undoubtedly will, please don't hesitate to contact our office for help. We take a team approach to customer service, but we are an experienced staff, we're well staffed, and we're really committed just to providing excellent student service and support throughout the process. Financial aid can be confusing. We hope to demystify some of that today, but rest assured that my colleagues and I are here to help make it as transparent as possible, and just happy to assist you throughout the process. And I think now Audrey has our first poll.
Yeah, so to get us started on the financial aid talk, I think we're going to poll you and see what kind of answers you guys come up with. Give it a couple more seconds here.
Lots of votes coming in.
Got an interactive group. You love to see it.
Yeah. All right. So it looks like majority of you have filed your FAFSA. If you haven't, it's already open. So I would start working on that if I were you guys.
Awesome, thanks. Yes, and thank you, Audrey. If you haven't done the FAFSA, don't fret, it's fine. There's still time, and I'm guessing you're just waiting for this very informative webinar before you get started on it. That is what I trust the excuse will be, which is absolutely fine. Let's talk a little bit about the different categories of financial aid available to students. We're going to talk about the FAFSA application and other applications you might need to apply, but we're going to start just by norming some of the language that we have. You're likely going to hear a lot of different ways to describe types of financial aid, and one important distinction is to really understand whether the financial aid you're offered is gift aid or self-help aid. So as you can see, gift aid is just as it sounds. It's money that doesn't need to be repaid. It's usually based on financial need or merit. Grants are, this isn't totally always quite this cut and dry, but grants are usually based on financial need. They typically require some application to demonstrate financial need, whereas scholarships are usually based on merit. And it could be academic merit, but also, athletic scholarships or other leadership scholarships, things that maybe don't involve academics quite as heavily. Gonzaga has lots of grants and even more scholarships. It's kind of mind-boggling when I query our system to see, and Matt is going to cover that in just a minute. We also have self-help aid. And again, this is, a great name for it. It's types of financial aid that have some obligation. Loans are probably the most common, right? Loans need to be repaid. So the other type that you'll hear a lot about is work study, and that's an opportunity to work on campus. So self-help aid is programs of financial aid where there's some obligation. And so when you're reviewing aid offers, especially if they're coming from lots of different schools, you really want to make sure and understand exactly what type of aid that you're receiving, and if there's obligations to maintain that aid, if you're going to have to repay it when you're done. And I think I'm going to kick it over to Matt to talk about the scholarships.
Thank you, Sarah. Yeah, I'm here to talk about scholarships to y'all for a few minutes. So it's important to know that at Gonzaga, 99% of our incoming first-year students received some sort of financial aid. It's even more important on top of that to note that a very high majority percentage of that came in the form of merit scholarships and need-based grants that our students do not need to pay back. So there are a lot of resources out there to help you take down, or to help you ease the cost at Gonzaga. And we are going to review first-year transfer and international applicants for a merit scholarship. And next year, those awards will range from $13,000 to $24,000 per year for 4 years. And while you're at Gonzaga, we'll talk about this a little bit later, a student's merit scholarship will not decrease during their 4 years at Gonzaga. And when looking at other schools, it's important to also look at their 4-year graduation rate to know the average amount of years you may be attending that institution. So Gonzaga's 4-year graduation rate is 80%, which the national average ranges at about 40 to 45% in a given year. So our scholarships for 4 years do a really great job of helping our students their entire time while they're at GU. Next fall, our admission process is test optional, and that means you do not need to submit an SAT or ACT score to earn a merit scholarship at Gonzaga. So if your tests have been canceled in your state, or you haven't had the opportunity, or honestly you don't feel safe about taking a test right now, that's completely okay. You do not need to take one to be eligible for a merit scholarship at Gonzaga, and you will be at no disadvantage throughout the review process if you apply test optional. So in addition to merit scholarships, we award application-based scholarships that students can apply for in addition to that merit scholarship. So it would be what we call stackable, and it would go on top of your merit-based scholarship. Our application-based scholarships can range from about $2,000 to $5,000 per year, and there are scholarships for first-year transfer and international students to apply for. These scholarships do have their own academic requirements that are different from the merit application base from your Common App that a student needs to meet to be eligible to apply. You can learn more about those application-based scholarships at gonzaga.edu/scholarships. The majority of those scholarships are due January 1st, so you may not know your admission decision at the time, but they are available for you to check out and apply for by January 1st. Our students also bring in over $3 million annually in outside scholarships. Outside scholarships are what you're probably very familiar with. They're awarded by various organizations throughout your community, and some common places to search for outside scholarships consist of churches, service organizations and nonprofits, your parent or guardian's employer, YMCA, my friend worked at Taco Bell, they gave him a scholarship. So there are great ways to get involved with your community and learn about scholarship opportunities, and your high school counseling office should be a fantastic resource for you to use throughout your scholarship search process in high school. Now, in terms of attacking scholarships and what's the best route to do that, we recommend that you begin your scholarship search at the local level because the application pool is going to be smaller, thus giving yourself more of an opportunity to be awarded. As you expand into those national searches, there can be thousands and thousands of applicants. So try and stay as local as possible to make yourself the most competitive within the pool. For Washington State students, especially on the west side, you're going to want to look into a scholarship called the Maxwell Foundation, and then the Independent Colleges of Washington. Seattle and Spokane area students can look at the Act 6 Leadership Scholarship. And then for all Washington students, there's a scholarship database called Washboard that you can check out, washboard.org. All right. So Gonzaga's Financial Aid Office also maintains an external scholarship database, and that provides you links to several scholarships through private organizations from around the US. These scholarships tend to be larger in the number of applicants, but they tend to be quicker applications too for some of them. So be sure to check that out, and they're a resource for you to apply for. They're there for you. And then for families that may have multiple ZAG siblings enrolled at Gonzaga, go Zags, during the same semester or year, we do have a tuition discount. The tuition discount provides the older student with 10% off of tuition. And then if you have a third ZAG on campus, the oldest would get 20% off tuition. The middle child would get 10%. That's all I got. So I'll pass it to Audrey for military benefits.
Thanks, Matt. So for students who are military connected, whether you're a student veteran or a dependent of a service member, use of military education benefits is an available option at Gonzaga. We've highlighted here just a few available programs utilized by our enrolling students. These include the Post 9/11 GI Bill and the associated Yellow Ribbon Program, the Montgomery GI Bill, Chapter 35 for survivors and dependents, as well as vocational rehabilitation benefits. A more extensive list will be available on our website though. It's important to note that there's a process for transferring service member benefits to a dependent through the Department of Defense. And then dependents in return you must apply to the VA to transfer that entitlement to the university. Families as well as student veterans are encouraged to build a timeline to complete these tasks and are welcome to contact Gonzaga's benefits coordinator, Mike Grabowski, noted here, for additional advising and assistance navigating that process. Once a student has confirmed enrollment to the university and registered for classes, benefits will be certified through Mr. Grabowski each semester. And now I think we're going to pull another question here.
This is a quiz.
It is a quiz. So tell us, true or false, grants always have to be repaid?
And while you're answering that question, there's a couple of other scholarship questions that came up in the Q&A in the chat, and we'll be sure to answer those once we after we share the results of the poll.
All right, we'll give it another second here. So the majority of you said false. And Sarah, do you want to share a little bit about the grants?
Yeah, grants do not need to be repaid. So we have lots of people paying attention, and I'm going to guess the people that said true might have just misread the question. But I want to go back to the scholarships for a minute. I think there was some questions about the Washington area ones. So that top site right there, washboard.org, is a site maintained by the state higher education agency that sort of administers state aid and among other things, the Washington Student Achievement Council. So that is a great resource. The Maxwell Foundation is the foundation that we refer to for Seattle area families. It's a foundation that gives out a fair amount of money to students pursuing higher education from the Seattle area. And then Act 6 is a scholarship program for students from the Seattle area and from the Spokane area. And I think that covered it. There was a couple more questions I just wanted to answer. They kind of fit in right here. Types of financial aid. So we talked about the broad categories. We're going to dig a little bit more into the types. We learned that grants don't have to be repaid. Scholarships generally don't have to be repaid either. We also have work study, federal student loans, and private loans. Yesenia in a bit is going to talk a bit more about the FAFSA application. But one of the questions that came up that I think is a good one that I'll just go ahead and take right now is if you have to register for the selective service in order to submit a FAFSA application, and you do, males between the age of 18 and 25 have to register for the selective service. If you apply before the age of 18, you're exempt from that requirement for the first year, but that is one of the requirements to receive federal aid. I also wanted to take the point though to make the distinction. You don't necessarily have to do a FAFSA to receive aid, especially those merit scholarships. Those, you're considered for those even if you don't submit a FAFSA application. It's just additional funds like grants, work study, and federal loans that you need to do the FAFSA application for. What type of aid you should accept, and do you have to accept all of it? I think are both really good questions. It really depends. We joke a lot in financial aid that our favorite answer to questions is it depends, which I know is super frustrating. But the things you're going to want to take into consideration, are kind of your family circumstances, how much money you have to pay for, to put towards college, how much the school costs, how far away you're going to attend college, because there's travel expenses involved, all those kinds of things. So let's talk about a couple of programs in particular. And I think we have a poll before I dive into work study.
We do. So the question is, do you plan to work while you're in college? I'm seeing a lot of yeses so far. Couple more seconds here. All right. So it looks like 62% of you plan to work while you're in college.
That's awesome. And the 29% not sure, that is perfectly fine too. And if you don't plan to work, that's great. But let's talk about work study. This is really one of the most frequently asked questions we get in our area. Student employment is also in the financial aid office. So work study is a type of financial aid program based on financial need. And in the state of Washington, we have federal work study and we have state work study. But it's okay if you don't get work study on your financial aid offer. There are lots of opportunities to work. In fact, we have a lot more students who don't work in like a formal work study program that are just in a regular student employment job than we do students in those work study programs. So we have, I want to say, about 1,800 students work every year, and those are only the ones that we can account. There's lots of students who, last year I was working with a student who worked at Dutch Bros in her hometown, and she transferred to a Dutch Bros in Spokane. That's not something that we would have access to those figures. So lots and lots of opportunities to work on campus. We in the financial aid office, with our sort of financial centered approach, you know, it's obviously a great way to earn spending money and just have a little bit of money. It also is a really wonderful way to just try out jobs and see what you like and what you don't like. I am really sitting here because one of my work study jobs in college was in an admissions office, and I kind of liked working on a college campus and working in higher education. So that experience for me was super valuable to kind of help guide ultimately where I ended up in my career. We have employers on campus and even the off-campus employers that are in the state work study program. They're super accommodating. They know that you're student first. They are great with schedules and kind of supporting students in their pursuits, kind of understanding that they're a student first and an employee second. And one of the other very specific questions I saw about work study was if it is taxable. And work study and student employment, from the student perspective, it looks just like a job. So a student would, you might even submit an application and have an interview, you'd get hired in the job, and then you'd earn, we get paid twice a week or twice a month at Gonzaga, and you would get paychecks. It can be used to pay your tuition, but most students just, you know, take that money and use it as their spending money for personal expenses and that sort of thing throughout the campus, throughout the school year, excuse me. Another program that we get lots of questions about is loans. And loans kind of have gotten a bad rap in the media. And really, you know, obviously borrow wisely and don't borrow what you don't need, but it is an important tool in the financial aid process to make college more accessible for millions of students. Students who have financial need are eligible to borrow in the direct subsidized loan programs. And those are loans that don't earn interest while you're in school. So if you borrow $5,000 and can pay back that $5,000 the day you graduate, that's all you would owe. Students who can do the FAFSA application are eligible for the direct unsubsidized loans. So most students who qualify for federal aid will qualify for an unsubsidized loan. They don't require financial need. You can make payments while you're in school, but you're not required to. And again, these would earn interest while you're in school, but it's relatively low. I think we're at historic low interest rates in these programs, at least the lowest that we've seen in a few years. The direct loans do have annual limits. For first year students, it's $5,500 total between those two programs. So if borrowing from those programs isn't enough, parents can borrow through a Parent Plus loan program. And then there's also private loans that are through lending institutions that you could borrow as well. Loans are really the last part of financial aid that we talk about. They're kind of like the last dollar in, meaning we want to get you as many grants, scholarships, and work opportunities as possible. So the questions for this tend not to come till later in the process, but I do just like to make people aware that it is an option. Gonzaga has an incredibly low default rate. We have great support to help students make their payments, pay back, navigate the process. So that is what I have to say about loans. And I'm going to kick it over to Audrey because we have another Poll.
Cool.
Real quick, this question is super topical, Sarah, so I'm gonna
Yeah.
have you answer right now. Since the Perkins loan were discontinued, is there a similar loan program that is forgivable if you work in a certain sector that has replaced the Perkins loan?
You know, there isn't. You should write your legislator about that to get that reinstated. Little plug there for policy, because those are the people who make the decisions. There's not a Perkins loan program currently. We do have an institutional loan program at Gonzaga. It's not yet quite as robust as a Perkins loan program, but we hope it will be. There are some, I won't go into all the repayment stuff. The federal direct loans have some loan forgiveness provisions, but they're not as maybe as generous or as specific as the Perkins loan program. Great question though.
So before Yesenia jumps into the FAFSA information, we're going to poll you and ask true or false. You shouldn't file a FAFSA if you think your family makes too much money. A couple more seconds here. All right, most of you said false. That's correct. So even if you think your family makes too much money, it still might be worthwhile to file that FAFSA. And Yesenia will take it from here.
Definitely. So thank you for those who participated in that poll. I think it's a great question to ask. Sometimes there's confusion for myself. I'm a first generation student. I had no idea what FAFSA was or what the scholarship process was or anything like that. So it's very common for some students to still, be confused with the whole lingo of financial aid. And so hopefully this presentation has been clarifying some of that information for you. For the FAFSA, it is the free application for federal student aid. It's definitely a form that you want to be submitting, especially if you're wanting to receive any financial aid for each academic school year that you're going to be applying to your university. The one thing to know also about FAFSA is that it is free, so there's no reason you should be paying for anybody to fill out your application. It will take you about 30 minutes to complete if you have all your forms ready to go, if not a little sooner than that. And there's so many benefits, as Sarah was mentioning. There's grants, there's work study, there's also loans that you can take with part of the financial with the FAFSA if you fill that out on time. The earlier the better. I think it's also going to be giving you the ability to maximize as much aid as you can receive as possible. So that's always a benefit for students who are looking to apply as first-year freshman students. And if you're going to be, of course, coming in this fall, make sure to submit that FAFSA application by December 1st. That is the deadline. It's already open in case y'all didn't know. Newsflash there. And for those of you who are transferred, there's two deadlines to keep in mind. There's the December 1st one, so you're going to be doing it same as all who are coming in this fall. And for those who are going to be coming in for a spring semester, make sure that you submit that by March 1st. So those are the two deadlines to keep in mind as you start navigating the application process. This here is a quick snapshot of what the FAFSA initial screen looks like. So in case you're confused as to where to go to www.fafsa.gov, and that's where you should be able to submit your application. Now, for those of you students who are still kind of like unsure whether you should fill out the FAFSA or not, I'm actually going to go back for 1 second. I know that we do have some students who are potentially underrepresented. I know that there was a huge, a lot of questions as to what if I'm a U.S. citizen and my parents are undocumented? Do I still file the FAFSA? Yes, you still file the FAFSA. Also for parents who are listening to us, or if you were a student with parents in similar situations as I was, just know you can still fill out the FAFSA. The FAFSA does not take any legal status documentation. It's not being shared with anybody. It's really just for us and for the states to understand where are you financially and how can we better support you as you start looking into the university setting. So again, we just want to help financially. It's not going to be related to any legal status, or none of that information is going to be shared with anybody. So please feel free to file the FAFSA safely and calmly. You just know all your information is going to be secured there. So for those of you who are sitting in a slightly different situation, if you are undocumented and obviously you have to be also a legal citizen to be applying for FAFSA. But again, if you have an undocumented status right now, you're more than able to still file for financial aid. And that's going to be through the Washington Application for State Financial Aid, better known as WASFA. So it's also a free application. Again, no need to pay anybody to get your WASFA filed. And of course, in here, it's you're going to be eligible for other Washington State funding available for you. And again, this is only for our Washington State students. Another thing, if you are undocumented, make sure that you fill out the needs analysis form. This one's going to be also beneficial for our financial aid office to also assist you and figure out ways in which we can still, provide you with other financial aid, either grants or scholarships also. However, there's always scholarships available for students. Kenji, actually, who's in this meeting today, is also a great person to get in contact with in case you're looking for scholarships for undocumented students. Also for here, same open date. The WASFA also opened October 1st, and the deadline's also going to be set for December 1st. So just make sure that you submit that by then. And just the place to go for that is going to be at www.readysetgrad.wad.gov. And that's where you can go ahead and file that at. All right, so another thing that I wanted to point out too is, for sure, you're gonna have a lot of questions throughout the process. Please take advantage of the fact that we do have our financial aid rep here, and you also have us within admission here to ask any questions that you'd like. We'll have a moment, of course, at the end to continue asking questions. However, I wanted to address these common questions that are kind of coming up for a lot of parents and guardians and students, of course. So the first question is, what investments are excluded as you're looking into the financial aid? We're excluding retirement accounts. We're also excluding primary residence value. Another one that's pretty common that folks ask us is, who's included as a parent when you're filing for financial aid? Both legal parents are going to be including in there without regard to marital status or gender if they're living together, right? The parent and step parent, if parent is remarried also. So those are some good questions I think a lot of folks have. And if you have specific questions, again, please make sure to follow up with our financial aid office to ask some more specific questions. The third question is, how are education benefit plans reported? Well, we have the Coverdell savings account, and it's also through the 529 savings plan and refund value of 529 prepaid tuition plans reported as parent investments. So hopefully that answers that for you all. All right. In regards to the timeline, how does that look like when you are looking to apply to Gonzaga? Well, we kind of broke it down step by step so that way you all can kind of understand what the process will look like, so you don't have to worry about what do you have to do next. The first thing, of course, is the application to Gonzaga. If you haven't started already, get to it. December 1st is the deadline, so make sure you get that filed in by then. So of course, just making sure that you get everything ready by then. The second step, of course, is filing your FAFSA or your WASFA, making sure that you have that ready to go, preparing your documents so it only takes you those 30 minutes to file that report there. And of course, applying early so you can maximize your aid as you apply for those two. The next one, then after you file and completed your FAFSA and completed also your application to Gonzaga, is receiving your financial aid, or receiving your acceptance package from us. That's gonna be huge, it's gonna be super exciting. So in here, really, I think one of the things I highly suggest right now, especially, is attending as many virtual events as you can to get yourself better informed about the university, student life, and anything that would be important for you. A great example is, for example, Preview Day happening this Saturday. So that's a good one to go to also talk to other faculty and students. After that, it's going to be receiving your financial aid offer. So typically, again, December 1st is the deadline. We're going to be making sure that we as admission counselors are reading and reviewing your holistic application. And then after that, we're going to also send out those acceptance letters, and then financial aid is going to come back with a financial aid offer. And then after that, we highly suggest that you sit down and really take a moment to sit down with your parents, your guardians, and just for yourself to kind of see whether Gonzaga is a perfect fit for you or not. It's always great to just start doing your research and making sure that you're budgeting out several things and just making sure that you use the right fit for you. And last, of course, is just confirming with us, letting you guys know that you're going to be a ZAG. And of course, there's so many other steps that will follow when the time comes. But in the meantime, this is kind of what your plan will look like eventually as you start your application process with us. As a reminder, make sure you submit your FAFSA or your WASFA, and that those get submitted ASAP. All right, so with that being said, I'll turn that back over to Audrey, who will talk more a little bit about the cost of attendance.
So we did have one more poll question regarding the FAFSA. This one is, only one FAFSA application is submitted during your college education, true or false? Okay. Looks like the majority of you said false. And that's true. The submission of a FAFSA should be completed annually to qualify for those state and federal funds that you might be eligible for. So what's included in the cost of attendance? Well, so one of the terms you hear about in the financial aid is going to be cost of attendance, which is pretty important. It's a good idea to have a clear understanding of how much it'll cost to attend a given school. While the precise budget amount that your family should prepare for is often difficult to determine exactly, you can start planning ahead and formulating a budget for some of those possible expenses that might arise. So the cost of attendance is an all-inclusive figure. When we talk about cost of attendance, we're really referencing two different types of costs. Direct costs, which is your tuition and your room and meal plans if you're going to be living on campus. And then indirect costs like your laptop and computer, your books, your supplies, your transportation around town. If you know that you're destined for one of GU's amazing study abroad programs, you'll also want to prepare for some of the costs associated with that program. So as you think about college costs, please be sure to consider some of these items as you budget and plan for the upcoming year. Gonzaga's Financial Aid Office has a really nifty out-of-pocket expenses worksheet online that can assist you with some of that planning following the issue of the financial aid packages in the spring.
Alrighty, I'm back. Here we go. The Gonzaga Guarantee, like I mentioned earlier, at Gonzaga, we guarantee that your Gonzaga institutionally awarded funds, which would be your merit scholarship, your Gonzaga grant, then if you're awarded any of those application-based scholarships that I talked about earlier at gonzaga.edu/scholarships and other awards that may be awarded, upon entry to the university, they will remain the same and not decrease at Gonzaga for 4 years. This includes need-based university grants, and again, merit and application-based scholarships. So as a Jesuit university, Gonzaga tries to embody this idea of magis. And magis emphasizes for our students in every capacity, our staff, what more can we do? How can we provide more to society? How can we serve the common good? How can we make Gonzaga accessible? All of these things that we want to do more for. So that is our goal, to always do more for our students. And with all the forms of financial aid that we've covered today, we work our hardest to try and make Gonzaga a possibility. And so for in-state students, one more step we've taken is the Magis commitment. So the Magis commitment allows Gonzaga to award Pell Grant eligible Washington State residents that apply as a first-year student to have their tuition covered from a combination of federal, state, and institutional financial aid resources. So again, if you're from Washington State and you're eligible for the federal Pell Grant and you're applying as a first-year or freshman student, your tuition can be covered by federal, state, and institutional financial aid resources. So we're trying to work our hardest with our in-state students and all of our students to make Gonzaga a possibility. Thank you.
One of the things I also want to better, Matt, is for those of you also who are still kind of new to the financial aid and what are grants and what are Pell Grants, right? Just keep in mind, I like to break it down a little bit more and be like, if you currently are eligible for free or reduced lunch, you will more than likely be eligible also for the Pell Grant. So just know that currently right now in high school, if you already received free or reduced lunch, that can probably indicate that you would most likely be eligible also for the Pell Grants. But yes, thanks, Matt.
Awesome, thanks. I am up and we're going to talk about special circumstances in just a second, but there was a couple of questions that came through the Q&A that I thought would be helpful to answer live. One or a couple questions came in about athletic scholarships and ROTC scholarships and how they work with financial aid. So one job we have as aid administrators to coordinate all the resources that a student receives. And so we will work with the athletic department, we will work with military science. We actually request information about what outside scholarships you're going to receive because it's our job to kind of coordinate that. We have compliance, there's ROTC compliance, there's athletic compliance, there's financial aid compliance. We work to make it together, but trust that we're gonna do our best to get you the most possible money as we can while within those rules. Outside scholarships tend not to affect a student's financial aid. I would say of the hundreds of students who bring in outside scholarships, we have to make minor aid adjustments on less than a dozen of those, probably not even that many. The times we have to make adjustments, students typically have a lot, they have like a large tens of thousands of dollars in outside scholarships or an outside scholarship. So if you're, if you have $1,000 scholarship, more than likely your aid will not need to be adjusted. And if we do have to make adjustments, we would look at any loans that you've accepted first and adjust those if we can, or we might adjust eligibility in the work program, and we would really try hard not to touch grants and scholarships. In fact, I'm not sure we've had to make any adjustments to grants and scholarships this year. And again, like I said, with those other scholarships where the financial aid office isn't sort of in sole charge and we have to work with other departments, we'll absolutely coordinate with them and try to get you a very clear picture of what the expenses are going to be. So those are great questions. Another couple questions I saw come up on the Q&A was about which parent should be on the FAFSA when the parents are divorced or are not married. And that is a very, very good question and a very important one. So if your parents, let's start with the straightforward one. If your biological parents are married, you would report parent income information for both parents. If your biological parents are not married but live together, you would report parent information for both parents. Again, if your biological parents are not married and don't live together, you would report income information for the parent who you lived with more during the last year. And if that parent is remarried, you would report your step parents' income as well. If you split time pretty equally between the two parents, you would provide information for the parent who provided more financial support. So I know there's a lot of like what ifs in there, and don't hesitate to reach out to finaid@gonzaga.edu. We actually have a flow chart we can show you to kind of help that decision tree. But if your parents are not married and don't live together, you would only report income information for one of them, and the FAFSA wouldn't ask for any income information for the other one. The next group of questions that came up were about this slide right here, which is special circumstances. My goodness, we are living through a time. Your FAFSA is going to request income information from the 2019 tax year, and a lot might have changed in your family's circumstances, and we have a process to address that. We refer to it as appeals or special conditions appeals. We're very aware that it may not be an accurate reflection. Even in normal times, we do about 400 of these appeals a year. So we have some information on our website. We are in the process of making plans for how we're going to process these for the upcoming 21-22 school year. We're anticipating quite a large increase in them, even from what we're used to. We're going to try to make it as intuitive and transparent as possible. But what I will say for now is when we talk about appeals, this is information that we are adjusting on the FAFSA application. So, the items that are reported on the FAFSA are like the family income, maybe untaxed income if you were receiving child support and not receiving child support anymore. Also medical expenses in elementary and secondary tuition, private school tuition are things that we could take into consideration. And what we do through the appeal process is make adjustments to your FAFSA application, recalculate your aid eligibility. You know, we wouldn't ever reduce your aid if it resulted in that. We'd look to see where we could increase your aid. So I would say be on the lookout. We'll update this page as we have a new process. There is a special conditions appeal form out there. It is for the 2021 school year. We don't have it updated for the 2021 school year, but we're working on getting that information out as quickly as possible. And rest assured that we will do our best to get you as much aid as we can, and that make sure we get an accurate reflection of your family's ability to pay for school. I will pass it over to Yesenia, who's going to share a little bit about kind of student accounts. Yesenia, I think you're muted.
Thank you for that. All right, so as you start kind of navigating a little bit more with the finances and, you know, understanding what the scholarships look like and all of those things, sometimes you will still receive a billing statement. And so a lot of the times, you know, we have parents and students asking like, where do we go? Who do we work with for that? It will no longer be with us with admission as well as financial aid. However, we're always more than happy to steer you through the right direction. And just a great office to start keeping in mind and getting familiar with is our Office for Student Accounts. And so they're really responsible for the preparation and distribution of billing statements for tuition, fees, room, board, and other related fees. So this office also processes payments, sets up payment plans, disperses financial aid, and issues refunds as well. So effective communication with students and their families is an important part of student accounts. And within their mission, of course, they are dedicated to helping students and families in the pursuit of their educational goals by providing financial information and resources in professional and individualized manner. So you will have several options to choose from when making payments to Gonzaga. Some examples here is basically paying full each semester. You can also have a chance to pay Gonzaga administered interest-free payment loans. And you also have, of course, those Parent Plus loans that Sarah was mentioning earlier, as well as private or alternative education loans as well. So all of these are some options for you to kind of look at. Of course, and for those of you who are going to be starting up for this fall next year, those billing statements will most likely be available by mid-July. So I've kind of provided some of their contact information here in the slide, so you're more than able to like contact them. It's good to kind of like screenshot it for a future reference. You won't need them right now temporarily, but again, good to know for the future. So other than that, I'll go ahead and pass it on to Audrey.
So that essentially concludes our webinar presentation, but I know we still have some outstanding Q&A questions to go over. So I'm going to read a couple, and maybe my colleagues can help me answer some of these, but I know there was a couple of questions about which taxes to file for the upcoming, well, for the current FAFSA that applies to next fall.
Yeah, this is a fun one. I was just typing the answer for it and I double checked online to confirm. So I assume that most of the attendees here are seniors in high school, or there's a lot of seniors in high school. And for seniors in high school, you're going to want to do the 2021-22 FAFSA application. That is for students who are planning to attend starting next fall semester, so fall 2021. And for that FAFSA, you will want to report income from your 2019 tax returns.
Okay. Another question was, what are the steps after filing the FAFSA regarding financial aid? And I think we kind of went over this on the timeline, but
yeah, great question. I will use the best answer in financial aid of it depends. So after you receive a financial aid offer, we'd ask that you do a couple of things. One is to just make sure you don't have any questions, that you understand what you're going to get. The financial aid offer will include kind of all the grants, scholarships, loans, work programs that you're eligible for. You'll want to sort of determine if Gonzaga is a good financial fit for you, or whatever school you're going to is a good financial fit, and start thinking about how you would make payment arrangements. Financial aid process isn't super linear, so it really depends. If you're going to borrow loans, you'll have some loan requirements. If you are some applications are selected for a process called verification, in which case the financial aid office will ask for a little bit more information to confirm the information you provided on the FAFSA. We automatically accept grants and scholarships, so as long as you confirm your enrollment with Gonzaga, you don't need to do anything to accept those. The other, then it will kind of roll into billing and payment, making payment arrangements, that sort of thing. So great question though.
So we had another question pop up about the music scholarships. Does the music scholarships include theater? And Matt, maybe you can help answer some of these.
Yeah, so unfortunately, music scholarships only apply to our instrumental and vocal performers on campus. And I saw that there was something included there about auditions. I am unsure if you where our theater programs travel to find students. All of our performing arts programs on campus, though, are open audition. So if you come to Gonzaga, you can be a part of those programs. There's not a special necessarily audition process for theater and dance. For music, they prefer an audition, but every once in a while we have current students at Gonzaga join the music programs with some background in music.
Thank you, Matt. We have a question about making a mistake on the FAFSA and then fixed it and resubmitted it. Will the first one be canceled, or do they have two FAFSAs floating around?
Yeah, another good question. I see a couple other FAFSA questions on here. So most students end up with more than one FAFSA application. There's different transactions for the FAFSA. We will look at the latest FAFSA we received. So you could make 4 more corrections between now and when we create your financial aid offer, and we will use the most recent one in that case. So yes, to answer your question, yes, you probably will have more than one FAFSA floating around, but trust that the financial aid offices know what to do with those multiple FAFSAs and how to look at them. Another question I just wanted to address, and I apologize I didn't get to this sooner because I think it's come up a couple times, but the FAFSA will require tax information and income information for the student as well as the parents. If the student didn't file taxes, you would indicate any wages that you earned. I get it, not all students have to file taxes, and you definitely don't have to file taxes to submit a FAFSA application, but it will require income information from the student. And there was one other FAFSA question I thought might be good to address, which is, how do you know if colleges have received your FAFSA? Also a great question. So we will send out a FAFSA acknowledgement. Most colleges are probably a little bit like Gonzaga, where even though the FAFSA has been open, it takes us a little bit to get our computer system set up to do the intake of all those FAFSAs. But once we do that intake, which will probably happen in the next few weeks, we will send out an acknowledgement. Not all schools do that. You can also contact the financial aid office, but really schools are pretty good at getting the information, but it never hurts to check and just send an email or call up an aid office and make sure that they received your FAFSA if you haven't received something like a receipt from them. And then the last, if I can just answer all the FAFSA questions that I see right now, how do you know how much FAFSA is giving you? So FAFSA confirmation is going to tell you if you're eligible for the Pell Grant, or if they think you might be eligible for the Pell Grant, and your direct loan eligibility. But that is not all the aid that you're going to receive. That information goes to the school. And like I said, we're in charge of coordinating all your aid eligibility. So we're going to tell you what federal aid you're eligible for, which is what you did the FAFSA for. We're going to let you know if you're eligible for any state financial aid. In Washington, state financial aid is for Washington residents attending Washington institutions. And we're going to let you know about any institutional aid you qualify for in a financial aid package. So that is how you know.
Okay. Looks like we have a few questions about majors. And I think what would be helpful is if we had you reach out to your admission counselor, schedule an admission interview and talk about some of those majors like nursing or engineering and what the requirements are for those programs. I think we're just about at our time limit, and I think any further questions should be directed to the admission counselors or Sarah in the finaid@gonzaga.edu. It's been a pleasure sharing information with you guys this evening, and we really appreciate your time. We do have a preview day this Saturday. It's at 11 a.m. Pacific time, and we'll give you some additional information about academics, a little more financial aid info, student panel, so you get to hear from Gonzaga students. And then we also offer several virtual visit events, so information sessions, more student panels, a live virtual tour, and those are all found on our virtual Gonzaga website. So with that, I think we're all going to say thanks for attending this event, and thanks for your interest in being a ZAG. Any final comments, you guys?
Just one last thing I do want to point out, in case I think Matt probably already beat me to this. Sorry, I'm just going to wrap this guy up on this end. If it allows me to, except there's these buttons that always get in the way. But there's definitely some links that I definitely want to share with you all. I feel like those are all going to be very important. As Audrey mentioned, there's so many other information that we want to share with you, but of course we're going to be hosting some virtual events as well. So if you're ever wanting to connect with us virtually, feel free to follow some of the links I'll be attaching at the very bottom here. So if you haven't left already, just feel free to kind of stick around as I kind of get these links for you. So I'm going to put them in the chat. Be sure to hit open to all of those, just so before you leave, you can have them open on your web browser. We want to thank you so much for joining us today. Again, if any of you are needing some translation in Spanish, we have other admission counselors in our office, in our financial aid office, that would be more than happy to help, myself included. So thank you all so much. Hopefully y'all have a great rest of your night, and hopefully we see you guys here to be future ZAGs. Woo! Bye everyone.